The sun had barely risen above the dusty plains when the sound of a small wooden bucket clinking against the side of an old well echoed through the still morning air. A little girl, no older than 8, stood on her tiptoes, struggling to pull the rope. Her tiny hands were red and raw, yet she didn't complain. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she whispered softly, "Hold on, Mama. I'll bring you water soon." Her voice trembled, but her determination didn't. Each drop of water meant life for her sick mother lying weakly in their tiny cabin beyond the hill. Every morning, before the heat set in, Clara made the same lonely walk across the dry fields. The path was long and rough, filled with sharp stones and patches of thorny weeds, but she knew every turn by heart. Her worn-out shoes had holes, and her faded dress hung loosely from her small frame. Still, she carried herself with a quiet strength far beyond her years. She never told anyone about her mother's illness. She was afraid the townsfolk would take her away, separate them, and she couldn't bear that thought. Her mother, Mary, had once been the heart of their small town, a gentle woman with a smile that could light up the darkest room. But after a terrible fever swept through, it left her frail and bedridden. Clara took it upon herself to care for her, doing the chores, fetching water, and even making simple meals. "Mama always says love is stronger than fear," Clara reminded herself each time loneliness crept in. The well had become her secret friend, the only place she could cry without being seen. One morning, as she bent to tie the frayed rope around the bucket, a deep voice startled her. "Hey there, little one," it said kindly. Clara froze, clutching the bucket tightly. Standing beside his horse was a tall cowboy, his hat casting a shadow over his rugged face. "Are you alone out here?" he asked softly, noticing how small she looked against the vast plains. Clara quickly wiped her tears, forcing a shaky smile. "I'm fine, sir. Just getting water," she said, avoiding his gaze. The cowboy, whose name was Luke, tilted his head, concern flickering in his eyes. He had been passing through the area on his way to town when he spotted the girl. Something about her fragile frame and determined spirit tugged at his heart. "That's a mighty big job for someone so small," he said gently. "Where's your folks?" Clara hesitated, glancing toward the distant cabin. "Mama's home. She's resting." Her voice broke slightly. Luke didn't press further, but he noticed her hands, calloused, shaking, far too worn for a child her age. Without saying another word, Luke dismounted and helped her pull up the heavy bucket. The rope burned his palms, and he realized just how hard this task must be for her every single day. When the bucket surfaced, full of clear water glinting in the sunlight, Clara whispered, "Thank you." Luke smiled. "You're welcome, little miss. What's your name?" "Clara," she replied quietly. "Well, Miss Clara," he said with a nod, "let me walk you home. Water this precious shouldn't be carried alone." Clara hesitated but eventually nodded. The path back was quiet, except for the crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Luke tried to make small talk, asking about her school or friends, but she answered in short sentences. When they reached the cabin, his heart sank at the sight, a small, weathered structure barely holding together, its roof patched with old wood and rusted metal. Through the window, he saw a woman lying still on a bed, pale and thin. Clara rushed inside and set the bucket down beside her. "Mama, I brought water." Mary opened her eyes weakly and smiled faintly. "You always take care of me, sweetheart." Her voice was fragile, like a whisper carried by the wind. Luke removed his hat and stepped inside quietly. "Ma'am," he greeted respectfully. Mary tried to sit up, startled to see a stranger. Clara quickly explained, "He helped me at the well, Mama. I'm sorry if I worried you." Mary's eyes softened as she looked at the cowboy. "Thank you, sir," she said with effort. "She's all I've got." Luke nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. Over the next few days, Luke couldn't get Clara out of his mind. The sight of that brave little girl walking miles for water haunted him. He decided to return, bringing fresh fruit, bread, and some medicine he got from the town doctor. When he arrived, Clara's eyes widened with surprise. "You came back," she said with a bright smile. "I sure did," Luke replied, grinning. "Thought maybe you and your mama could use some help." From that day on, he became a regular visitor. He fixed the leaky roof, mended the fence, and even taught Clara how to ride his horse. Laughter slowly returned to the small cabin, and for the first time in months, Mary's cheeks gained a hint of color. She often watched from the window as Luke and Clara rode across the fields, her heart swelling with gratitude. "He's like an angel," she whispered one evening. Clara nodded. "I think God sent him, Mama." But one night, Mary's condition worsened. Clara sat beside her, holding her mother's hand tightly. "Mama, don't leave me," she cried. Tears streamed down her face, and her voice shook. Mary smiled weakly. "You've been so brave, my little one. Remember what I told you, love is stronger than fear." As dawn broke, Mary's hand went still in Clara's grasp. The world seemed to crumble around her. Luke found her hours later, sitting silently, her eyes red but calm. He knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms. "You're not alone, Clara," he whispered. "You'll never be alone again." Days later, as the small town gathered to lay Mary to rest, Luke stood beside Clara, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. The townsfolk, who had once turned away from the lonely cabin, now offered comfort and support. Clara didn't cry. She looked up at the sky, remembering her mother's words, and whispered, "I'll be strong." Luke knew then that he couldn't just ride away. He filed papers with the local authorities to become Clara's guardian. "I reckon your mama would want you to have a home," he said softly when he told her. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "But you already gave me one," she whispered. From that moment, their lives intertwined like two lost souls finding family in the most unexpected place. Years passed, and Clara grew into a bright, confident young woman. She often returned to the old well, now surrounded by flowers Luke had planted. Every time she looked into its still waters, she saw her reflection, strong, hopeful, and filled with love. Luke, now older and slower, would sit nearby, smiling proudly. "Your mama would be mighty proud," he'd say. And Clara would smile back. "She is," she'd whisper, "because I'm not alone anymore." One evening, as the sun dipped low over the golden fields, Clara stood by the well, holding a small locket with her mother's photo inside. "Mama," she said softly, "thank you for teaching me that love never leaves, it just changes shape." A gentle breeze brushed against her cheek, as if in reply. Luke watched from the porch, tipping his hat with tears in his eyes. The little girl who once carried water alone had found her strength, and a family that love built from kindness. The story of Clara and Luke spread quietly through the nearby towns, becoming a tale mothers told their children, a reminder that even the smallest acts of compassion can change a life. Travelers would often stop by the old cabin, where Clara, now a teacher, welcomed every lost soul with warmth. "No one should ever feel alone," she'd say, echoing the same kindness that once saved her. And each morning, as the sun rose, Clara still visited the well, no longer as a scared little girl, but as a woman who understood that courage doesn't come from strength, but from love. The echoes of her laughter filled the fields, mingling with the whisper of the wind and the memory of a cowboy who once stopped to ask, "Are you alone?" She never was again. By the end, the plains that once felt empty were now alive with hope. The cabin became a home of laughter, the well a symbol of love, and Clara, a testament to how a single act of kindness can ripple through generations. For in the heart of a small girl who carried water for her ill mother, the world learned that true strength lies in compassion, and love always finds its way back home.